As you know that the admin menu is used to set the default settings or preferences for the Primavera P6. We have 4 options in the admin menu as briefly explained earlier in the Primavera P6 look and feel section, which are admin preferences, admin categories, currencies, and financial periods. As you can see that every category in the admin menu has several options that we are going to explore and cover in this present lesson. Please remember that somehow if you don't have access to some settings in the admin menu, then depending on the situation, it depends on the current Primavera P6 installation settings, that these options might have been blocked or restricted by the system administrator in your organization. So the first option in the admin preferences category is General tab. As shown in the General tab, the code separator is used to set the default WBS code separator for new projects, and here we also set the cost accounts code separator as well. Alternatively, this code separator may also be set for each project in the project window in the project details form in the settings tab as required. Starting day of the week sets the first day of week, as it also shows on the time scale and left columns of the calendar. Normally, the default is preset to Sunday, but better that we should change it to a Monday, since in the project calendar it represents the working day in the calendar time scale, which is more appropriate as compared to a non-working day date. Activity duration option sets the default activity duration for the new activities, which we can change as per our project requirements. The next option is password policy, which is used to enable the password policy checkbox. As per industry standards, the password policy is to authorize a password that is at least 8 characters long, including 1 alpha and 1 numeric character. The password policy is recommended but not mandatory, and password limitations are not put into effect until this checkbox is marked. If this checkbox is not marked, passwords can be up to 20 characters in length according to the original password policy. Next, the Data Limits tab is used to mention the maximum number of levels allowed in all hierarchical code structures, such as the maximum number of EPS or WBS levels per project and maximum number of activity codes per project. Also, the maximum number of baselines per projects can also be mentioned here. The ID length tab is used to set the maximum number of characters in the ID fields only. And please note that this settings, ID length, has nothing to do with the descriptions. In the time periods tab, hours per time period values are used to convert from one time period unit to another. For example, from days to hours, such as a 40 hours activity would be calculated as a 5-day with the settings shown in the window. Please remember that as we can see and assign calendar to specify the number of working hours for each time period, which help the users to edit the hours per time period in each calendar as needed. Important to note that when multiple calendars with different hours per day are being used, then this checkbox is checked and the user should correctly specify the hours per time period in each calendar. Time period abbreviations are used to specify the abbreviations for each time period or the display durations. Next is the Earned Value tab. Please remember and note that the Earned Value topic is dealt separately and not covered in this course. But just for our understanding, the Earned Value is simply a technique or method that we use for measuring the project performance according to both project cost and schedule. The Earned Value tab is used to set the default values or settings for calculating the earned value and may be changed individually for each WBS. Please note that it applies to all activities within each WBS element. As mentioned, this technique for calculating performance percent complete is used to select the formula for calculating the earned value. Similarly, the technique for computing estimate to complete or ETC is used for selecting the formula for calculating the ETC. For earned value calculations, in the drop-down menu, we can select some more options for calculating the earned value. When calculating the earned value from baseline, generally, the Primavera default is usually set to budgeted values with plan dates option, but one must use this option carefully. The Reports tab helps us to define three default sets of headers, footers, and custom labels for the reports. The Reports headers and footers option sets the default labels for the reports. The first set option is used to define a header, footer, or custom text label for the reports. Second set used to define a second header, footer, or custom text label for our reports in the Primavera P6. The third set, we can choose to define a third header, footer, or custom text label for our reports that we generate in the Primavera P6 as per our project requirements. Please note that these options may also be accessed in the printout settings as well. In the Options tab, specify the interval to summarize and store resource spreads. This option helps us to set the time period, such as week or month, for storing the summarized activity data at WBS and resource or role assignment levels. By calendar option is used to choose if we want to summarize and store activity and resource spreads according to the calendar intervals we specify in the WBS level and resource or role assignment level fields. This option is selected by default. Please note that if we summarize projects with the by calendar option selected, then clear the checkbox and summarize project again, since the previously existing summary activity and resources spreads are not removed automatically. We must remove them manually. The WBS level, we choose this option for the time interval such as week or month for storing summarized activity data. Resource per role assignment level option, we choose this as a time interval such as week or month for storing the summarized resource data. By financial period option, we select this option if we want to summarize and store activity and resource data in financial period intervals that correspond to the range of financial periods defined in the financial periods dictionary. Please remember that we cannot clear both the by calendar and by financial period checkboxes. At least one checkbox must be marked. If we choose to summarize by both calendar and financial period intervals, summarizing jobs may take more time to run. Rates type tab, as you can see that the Primavera P6 has 5 resource rates types mentioned here. By using the resource rate types window, we can change or rename the titles of the rates if needed. Next comes the industry tab. The industry type is used to define the terminology, default calculations used in some fields in the Primavera P6. As you can see, engineering and construction option, which determines the use of terminology and default settings for calculations, which are aligned with engineering and construction industries. Government, aerospace, and defense option, which determines the use of terminology and default settings for calculations, which are relevant and aligned with the government and with aerospace and defense industries. Similarly, high technology, manufacturing, and others, along with the utilities, oil and gas option, is used to determine the use of terminology and default settings for calculations that are aligned with their respective industries. In order for this change to take effect, it would be better and advisable if you can restart the Primavera P6 Professional.